There will be no postseason for the Patriots, Giants, and Raiders. It's time for the Levy Grail today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Joe, I'm sure a number of people who might not have been listening to the show a year ago are wondering themselves, Levy Grail? What's the Levy Grail? And why are you doing it for the Raiders, the Giants, and the Patriots? So this feels like a great time to introduce any new listeners we have to the concept of the Levy Grail and what it means.
All right. So welcome in. The season's over in terms of playoff aspirations. And whenever that's the case,
officially eliminated,
we do the Levy Grail. And the Levy Grail pays homage to Marv Levy, Hall of Fame head coach for the Buffalo Bills, that led the Bills to 4 Super Bowls in a row in which they lost all 4. And he made famous a poem that was kind of the rallying cry for the Bills to regroup and continue. And the poem is as follows: "Fight on, my men. I am hurt, but I am not slain. I'll lay me down and bleed a while, and then I'll rise and fight again." So it's time to acknowledge what it is, but look to the future and find optimism for the Patriots, Giants, and Raiders today.
So fight on, Patriots, Giants, and Raiders fans, because we are here to remind you of what you have to look forward to starting this offseason. And we're starting with the New England Patriots, who I think are probably the easiest one out of this group.
Brother, yes.
All you do is take inventory of assets and a young quarterback. And I think that's where this conversation starts, as far as you have a lot to work with. When you have a lot to work with, it opens the door for you to do the necessary evil sometimes in free agency, even if that means spending premium for players that contracts might not age the most gracefully, but you have the opportunity to win those players on the open market and bring them into your team to get a big infusion of talent. They have an extra 3rd-round draft pick this year, courtesy of the Matthew Judon trade, in addition to Drake May and the way he's played this season.
Yeah, man. Drake May's the thing to be excited about. It feels like you've got a good direction there, an opportunity to build around him. And I think that's important that you've had a year with him. You've gotten acquainted with his personality, his skill set, what concepts he likes, what he doesn't like. And then through that, you get an idea of what type of personnel you need around him. And the reality is you need a lot of personnel. Like, the fact that Drake May is inspiring us right now is the leading reason to be optimistic based on his performance with that offensive line, with those receivers. It's exciting. Like,
yeah,
now that you have this opportunity, figure it out around him. And like you mentioned, there are assets. This team has $132 million in projected cap space next offseason. That's number 1 in the NFL by $20 million.
Yeah.
Not to mention, like you said, the draft capital, which includes a top 5 pick as things currently stand.
So they're going to have a choice to, I think they have a lot of flexibility with the draft capital too. Oh, by the way, Joe, did we mention carryover cap for this team?
Well, that's the good news about not being able to sign anybody last offseason is you get some carryover cap.
Yeah, so they are currently 3rd in the NFL in salary cap space, according to Over the Cap, with $37.9 million in cap space this year. which if you're uninitiated, if you don't use it, you don't lose it. You can carry it over to future years. So the sky's the limit for New England. And you mentioned Drake May and his play amidst what the supporting cast has been. And I know there's some questions and concerns that we had about when you chose to put Drake May out there. I think you have to be super delighted with how he has individually handled the rigors of playing with an offensive line that, Michael Onwenu was supposed to be the right tackle. And he's since moved inside the guard, and they've had injuries to a bunch of guys, and they got youth and unsettled answers at tackle spots with Vidarian Lowe as the left tackle players. That's your long-term player there. And I know they drafted Caden Wallace, but just the instability around him for him to be the most stable performer week in and week out. And then I thought the performance this past week against the Colts too.
Yeah.
The efficiency of it, the discipline of it for a quarterback who can play outside of structure and like to take big shots down the field. He didn't really take the cheese in a lot of those opportunities against Indianapolis. And I was really impressed with how he executed that game plan against the Colts and had them in a position to win the game if they stand up in the final seconds defensively.
I think there's a lot of work to do offensively on this roster, but I think they have some nice building blocks defensively. Christian Gonzalez at corner was looking really strong as a rookie, got hurt. He's come back and has recaptured what momentum he had early on. I think he's on this type of path to being, potentially a top tier corner in the league. Keon White, as was he a second round pick a couple of years ago. Quiet as a rookie, but this year I think he's probably been their best defensive lineman. The athleticism is showing up. He's affecting the quarterback. I think Marcus Jones is another player who was hurt last year, is back, and has given them some good production in the slot. And I think is a player that you can look at as a young piece to kind of build things around. So while I think there's a lot of work to do offensively, defensively, I think there's some nice pieces, not to mention the unfortunate situation with Christian Barmore this year, and we know what type of player he can be. So I think there's some pieces on this defense here that can help them, not to mention Duggar, who's not had a good year this year, but certainly a talented young player.
I think you're doing him a little I think you're doing him a little favor saying a down year. He has not been good.
Right, but he's played better, right? So that's
he's capable of playing better.
He signed a nice contract too, didn't he? So he's going to be around.
$17 million per.
Yeah, he's got a lot to live up to there.
But he'll be 29 next season.
You don't think about that with him, huh?
Right. As a guy who recently came through, I would say this. My question. I know the entire purpose of this is being optimistic. But if you had a concern, what would your biggest concern be for the Patriots? And what can they look to with that variable to find more optimism as far as like you're looking for growth in this phase aside of just personnel?
Oh man.
Like I don't know where I'm at with Gerard Mayo is the reason I'm asking the question.
Oh, dude. Yeah, I have a multitude of concerns with Gerard Mayo. It started during his introductory press conference. Like you just kind of picked up on, oh yeah, that was kind of a weird thing to say. And then it's kind of snowballed, honestly, throughout his entire tenure. So I've
put his foot in his mouth on more. Even talking about the defensive strategy, and we won 6 Super Bowls with doing this.
Yeah.
So
I'm concerned about that for sure.
I think if you're a Patriots fan and you're looking for, regardless of what the offseason looks like and how it plays out, if you're looking for more optimism early in next season, I would be looking for over the offseason and early in the year next year, looking for growth from Gerard Mayo. And if you see those signs in addition to like the personnel stuff's going to take care of itself. But if you see that on top of the personnel stuff, well, the personnel stuff's not guaranteed to take care of itself, but you're going to have every opportunity in the world to do that. Then I think that would be another source and injection of like enthusiasm for what the outlook of the team is.
And you don't have to watch Matthew Judon recruit players all off season long, only for them to never come to your football team. So that's no longer part of your bingo card.
Blessing. Yeah.
So there it is. Patriots in the books. Next up, we have the New York Football Giants. Folks, be sure to stick with us. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long. Prize Picks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get money in as quick as 15 minutes. And Prize Picks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this season. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Currently in the process of doing the thing, Joe, with the New York Giants, looking at some of their salary cap books and opportunities that they have to create some more cap space as a team that we're going to look at next. When you consider where this team is at with Joe Shane and Brian Daboll and the roster and the way that it's played out and the Daniel Jones saga, what do you like the most for the outlook with the Giants?
It's an interesting way to frame it. I think what I'm most optimistic about the Giants is what they've gotten out of their 2024 draft class. I think this is a foundational class. Now, I'm concerned about what coaching is going to be in place and what the plan is going to be for these players if they wind up pulling the plug. But Malik Neighbors looks like a hit. Tyler Newman looks like a hit in a big way. Andrew Phillips has been really good at corner. Theo Johnson has at least shown that he's going to be a number 2 tight end. Tyrone Tracy has certainly had a lot of positive plays that he's made. That's a good draft class. Now, what I don't love about that draft class is I didn't say any big people, right? Those are all DBs, wide receivers, a tight end, and a running back.
I think that's where they probably felt the best coming into the year, though.
I guess, right? They certainly invested in the offensive line. But Andrew, he's got to stay healthy, Andrew Thomas.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right about that. They did. I mean, between Burns and Runyon, yeah, with Extra Lawrence, of course, they brought in Luminar. Like they certainly did things to help the trenches. But that's a good draft class, man. Those are a lot of hits there. It looks like. Yeah,
and I think you bring up a fair point about potential change with the organization. That's where it gets really scary because think about what the Matt Patricia Lions. The investments that they made to go get guys for what they wanted to be, and then they make a change. You got to get all those guys out of your system. You don't have to look any further than Emmanuel Forbes, who was just the 16th pick in the draft and went 1 spot ahead of Christian Gonzalez.
Yikes!
And he was cut this past week. He's claimed off waivers by the Rams. I think that's a good landing spot for him.
Yeah,
I think that's a great opportunity for him to get himself right and get himself acclimated with one of the best talent development franchises in the league right now, as far as the Rams and what they've been able to do with a lot of young players. But that sunk cost is real, and that's a concern for the Giants that you have. I think the pillars that you have with some of your top dollar players is an area where I find a little solace if I'm the Giants, and they're scheduled to have $60 million in cap space, according to overthecap.com. That number, Joe, can get up to 9 figures, as simple as restructure Andrew Thomas, Brian Burns, and Dexter Lawrence.
You very casually just said 9 figures. Like I have to figure out what that means in my head. 9 figures. That's hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm not used to numbers like that.
Up to $100 million in cap space by restructuring Thomas, Burns, and Lawrence.
Done.
In addition to what you already have, right? That feels like no-brainers.
Yeah. If you need to do it, sure.
So I think that's, you're looking at the plan and where it needs to go from here, you could very quickly be amongst the league leaders in cap space as well.
With what I would argue as amongst these 3 teams, certainly the most foundational talent of any of these teams, with Andrew Thomas, with Malik Neighbors, with Dexter Lawrence, with Kayvon Thibodeau, with Brian Burns, with Bobby Okereke. We mentioned guys like Tyler Newman from this draft class. They have some nice building blocks for this roster, not to mention you said the $60 million in cap space, which is 13th in the league. And again, early draft capital as well coming their way. They're going to have an opportunity to continue adding and building. And it just comes down to that next direction at quarterback. And maybe based on what we just said, with some of the foundational pieces of this roster and the opportunities that exist, it could be an attractive spot for maybe a quarterback early in the draft. But if there is a guy that's out there that can, I don't know, a Jameis Winston type quarterback, I think this is going to be a decent spot for someone to land this offseason if they want to go that type of route.
Yeah. I mean, they have a number of adequate to quality level starters on the offensive line. They have Malik Neighbors. They really don't have any expiring contracts of note other than what Darius Slayton is the
3 years we've been talking about that guy getting traded, right?
Right. But I think that's part of the process of a lot of these teams. You get into the offseason and it's okay, where do we go from here? What do we change? You really don't have a lot that has to regress if you're it should just be all building, because expiring contracts of note are Darius Slayton, Greg Van Roten, Isaiah Simmons, Adoree Jackson, Jason Pinnock, Armon Watts, Drew Lock. I guess Azeez Ojulari is the one who I could see as a young player getting the most buzz in free agency, but they were kind of rumored to be in the market to potentially trade him at the trade deadline too.
And Ojulari, I mean, with what they have on the edge, he's also a guy that's injured all the time, dude. It's like 3 years in a row of just never available. So if someone's going to take the cheese in free agency, you might be able to parlay that into a comp pick, although you're not going to adjust your spending strategy, right? You have money you need to add. You're not going to not bring in a player that you like because you want a third or fourth round pick for Ojulari.
Right.
But yeah, they've created that luxury with what they've been able to add at the edge rusher position.
So I think this is a team that, and let's be honest too, they're going to be in position, I think, to get one of the two quarterbacks in this class. Because you look at the way that they played the last couple of weeks, the way that they played, particularly on Thanksgiving against Dallas, right? It's kind of an ugly showcase. 247 yards of offense against Dallas, who's been horrible. You go New Orleans at home. Do you think that's a winnable game for New York?
It's hard to say any game's winnable for New York, but maybe.
Right. But the point is you're going to get to Baltimore, at Atlanta, Indianapolis, and at Philadelphia. I would imagine we're going to be a 2 or 3 win football team, which is going to squarely put you in the position you need to be in to draft one of the two quarterbacks that are perceived to be top quarterback options.
Do you feel strongly about predictively what they're going to do with Shane and Daboll? Because that obviously changes this conversation somewhat.
I think the Saquon Barkley stuff is going to be a really big black eye for Joe Shane, having seen behind the scenes of what that was like with Mara and the discussions internally. And I would not be surprised as a result of that. But also, like, you're in year 3 and you have 2 wins through December 3rd. I would at least think Joe Shane potentially is going to be on the outs.
The fascinating part of that conversation is Saquon's tremendous for Philly. I'm not sure the Giants have a different record if Saquon's on their team.
Probably not.
Maybe 3 or 4 wins. Like, you're still terrible. No matter what, you're still terrible.
Right. When you reflect on some of the losses that they've had, I mean, they had 1-score loss to Dallas where they rushed for 26 yards. Do you maybe win that game? Do you maybe beat the Commanders in week 2 when you lost by 3 points? You're getting smoked most of these other weeks.
Right. These aren't a lot of competitive.
They lost the Commanders the second time, but rushed for 164 yards.
Like you mentioned, division games are different, right?
Yep.
Like, they're a little bit closer, but
lost to Carolina in overtime, but rushed for 167 yards.
Yeah, he fumbled. Tracy fumbled in that game, but
right.
Issues are bigger than bringing back Saquon Barkley. So that's the Giants. We'll close out today by focusing on the Raiders. Stick with us. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 of bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet over at FanDuel.com. And look, I've already peaked some of the lines for this coming week. And obviously the Thursday show, we will predict all the games. But there's two that look a little tasty for me. The first one, the Bears, plus 3.5 at San Francisco. Come on now, the Bears, they wanted that coach gone. They're going to want to rally for this one. 49ers are real and everyone's hurt. I like that one. I also like this one. The over-under for the Bills-Rams. They had that set at 49.5. The under looks pretty good for me there. I don't know that you're going to get enough scoring to get to 50 points there. I mean, I like that. Those look tasty for me. I've got a little parlay on both of those. So never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Man said they look tasty.
Tasty.
Okay, let's do the Raiders. Let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders, who I think are the most interesting team when you consider their standing within the AFC West with Harbaugh and the Chargers and Peyton and the Broncos and obviously Patrick Mahomes. This team has regressed in the area that they were strongest at with Antonio Pierce last year, which was defensively and creating turnovers. Joe, they have 5 turnovers defensively on the season. So as you look at where this team is at, I think the change at offensive coordinator with Scott Turner and Norv Turner being brought in as a consultant, I actually think that's done some nice things for them as far as the utilization of Brock Bowers. The challenge will be how much stability is there within the personnel? How much stability will there be with the coaching staff? Is Norv Turner going to stay on staff? Like I got a lot of questions there, but the way that they've been able to pull out more out of Brock Bowers is probably the first place my head goes when I think about what the Raiders have to look forward to.
I'm glad you framed it like that, what the Raiders have to look forward to. And let's call it what it is. The Raiders have been a terrible franchise for a long time. Since 2003, they've had exactly 2 seasons above 500. They stink. Okay, since 2003, that's 22 years, Kyle. They've had 2 seasons with a winning record, 12-4 in 2016, 10-7 in 2021. Bad teams stay bad because of what? Ownership.
Yeah.
What do you have? Tom
Brady.
This is where every ounce of optimism I would have if I was a Raiders fan, it would be in that Tom Brady is in this building. He's not the majority owner, but he exists. And Mark Davis has to listen to Tom Brady. And listen, Tom Brady has zero proof of concept for his ability to own a football team and build a winner or personnel, whatever it takes. We don't know what that is, but we know what Mark Davis is. Right, this is not a good operation. It's been terrible. The fact that Tom Brady exists opens the door for new ideas, new perspective, new strategies, and that's what my optimism would be rooted in if I was a Raiders fan.
Okay, I like where you're going here. This is a team that has a number of good talents. You consider, we mentioned Brock Bowers. I think the identity of the guys that they have as the pillars on the defensive front with Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins, who's missed time. Seems like a nice foundation to start. I think you've got some guys behind them in the back seven who have potential. I think, Robert Spillane feels like a nice cornerstone type of, not franchise cornerstone as far as like how we quantify players, but should have every opportunity to continue to be a piece of the puzzle for them. But yeah, they have the most work to do, I think, of the teams that we have outlined here. And I think bringing in a new eye at the level of what, like, it's been reported that Tom Brady is going to be pretty hands-on with a lot of stuff. I think every Raiders fan should be sitting here hoping that Brady doesn't get any better at broadcasting, so that he can maybe give more of his time to the Raiders and ownership, because he obviously brings a winning pedigree, and the Raiders have not had that in quite some time.
They also have assets, right? They have $112 million in cap space. They have an early draft pick.
They have no sales in state.
Yeah, they got all that stuff.
Income tax.
They got that stuff going. And I think there's like you mentioned there's that makes it attractive. Vegas is going to be attractive. The potentially Tom Brady thing. I think that's all working in their favor. They got some foundational talent as well. I mean, Brock Bowers looks really good. Dylan Parham on the offensive line looks like a major hit. Max Crosby's still only 27 years old. Right? He's got a lot of good life left there. Christian Wilkins will be back next year. He's another, that's going to help your football team, you'd think. So they do have a lot of work to do, but there's at least some pieces that you look at on this roster and feel like they got some building blocks.
Let me say this too. They have a last place schedule next year. That's
good point.
It's a lock, right? So what does that mean? That means they will play the last place AFC East team, which could be either the Jets or the Patriots. I think you're probably rooting for it to be the Jets, right?
Probably, yeah.
You pick who you want to play, because that's an away game. Would you rather go to New England, or would you rather go to New York and play the Jets? I'd rather go to New York and play the Jets.
Yeah.
That means you get the AFC North last place finisher, which will be presumably Cincinnati based off of their defense.
Cleveland. It's Cleveland.
Is it Cleveland?
It's got to be Cleveland. They want 3 wins, right? I might be close, but
come on. Cincinnati's got 4.
I know. It's crazy.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Cincinnati's got like some tough games down the stretch.
They might.
I think they play it's either the Broncos or the Chargers. They go at Dallas, at Tennessee, Cleveland, Denver, at Pittsburgh to close. So the last 2 are against potential playoff teams, and Cleveland, we just saw Jameis throw for 500, but couldn't play keep away from the Broncos last night. So, I mean, they're only separated by a game, but you bring up a good point. It could be either one of those 2 teams. Here are the teams you get outside of the AFC East, the AFC West opponents at home next year. Dallas comes to you. I'd rather get Dallas coming. I mean, if you're going to get the home games, take the bad opponents at home, get the home field advantage. The Jaguars have to come to you. The Titans have to come to you next year. So you obviously have your divisional games, but then you get Jags, Titans, Cowboys, Giants, AFC North last place finisher at home. So if we're going to do the gymnastics about like, oh, well, this could happen or this could happen, from a schedule perspective, I'd feel better about getting a home win against Dallas than I would about Philly coming to town. You're going to go to Philly, and you're probably going to lose that game, but it is what it is. So that's what I have for the Raiders.
Not great when we start talking about the schedule.
The purpose of the Levy Grill is to provide all possible sources of optimism and positivity around your team as you are eliminated from the playoff field. And that's what we have done and delivered for the Patriots, the Giants, and the Raiders. That is going to do it for us here today on Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Krabs. He's Joe Marino. We appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. We will be back again tomorrow looking at a couple of draft prospects. We're going to get back in the NFL draft, look at 3 prospects that I really like. Joe, you got them on your Post-it note?
I do, literally right there. Yep.
Great. So we have Kamari Ramsey, safety, USC.
Yep.
Who else do we have?
Shamar Stewart, defensive lineman from Texas A&M. This Boston College edge rusher.
And this Boston College edge rusher that I'm not going to say because I want Joe to come in tomorrow and have learned how to say his name. So we'll see how that goes. That's going to do it for us here. We're out of here. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk to you all again tomorrow.